then talk about, I want to buy a book on apologetics and how to argue this issue and how to argue that issue. What I gently say to them, spend time in the truth and you'll be able to give an apologetic for any of the falsehood you're exposed to, because you'll see them a mile off.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
So good. I love what you had. I love what you had in the newsletter from Neil Anderson, author of Victory Over Darkness and Bondage Breaker, where he says it's not what we do that determines who we are. It's who we are in Christ that should determine what we do.
Yeah.
In God's eyes, beingness is more important than doing this.
Absolutely. I mean, God is concerned about the motives of men's heart.
Right.
He's concerned about your character. Because, I can take somebody who is a natural leader. I can give them a process, a methodology, a procedure. And I know if they have the discipline and the focus, they'll be able to engage that methodology or that process or that procedure. And I can predict what the outcome is going to be. It's usually linear and additive. But when you take that same process, methodology, or procedure and put it against a backdrop of biblically informed character, all of a sudden the results are no longer linear and additive. They're logarithmic. They're exponential. They explode in terms of their impact, because it's the character that informs what they do. That's what Neil is saying. It's not what you do that determines who you are. It's who you are in Christ that should determine what you do. It's all about beingness. Your doingness is all the more powerful against the backdrop of Christ-centered beingness. Period.
So, I mean, give me, let's take it to a level that I can understand. Give me an example between maybe the two of you. You said the linear versus logarithmic, right? So give me an example of what that would look like. How would you recognize that if you're operating in that as a man?
Well, one of the ways, let's look at it from this perspective. I'm often asked, what's the difference between a talent and a spiritual gift?
Okay.
So a talent is something that you're born with, that if you understand what that talent is, you could leverage it to produce a recognizable outcome.
Sure.
I mean, if you have a talent to teach, then your classes are informative, people are learning some things. But if you have the spiritual gift to teaching, the difference between a spiritual gift and a talent, spiritual gift always produces a spiritual result. So when I talk about logarithmic and exponential, I mean that whatever you're doing is going to produce something far deeper, far more penetrating, far more comprehensive, far more life-changing than just simply producing whatever the objective might be. It goes well beyond that. Because it's informed and it's energized and it's catalyzed by a biblically informed character, which brings it to life, which brings all of a sudden, it's a matter of the influence that you have. There's three different types of influence. There's direct influence, like face-to-face. There's indirect influence, whatever impact I'm having on you. The people that are in your sphere of influence who I'll never meet may be impacted simply because of what I've taught you. And then there's organizational influence, which is exerting whatever influence you have in an organization at a critical point in time. When you grow in Christ, and when your sense of character and beingness is strong and it's founded on Jesus Christ, then the degree in which you penetrate, me penetrating you, is no longer just giving you mental hooks to put things. All of a sudden, your life starts to be transformed. God is taking what I'm teaching you, and it's touching you viscerally. It's touching you in a passionate way. So the intensity of what's being done penetrates deeper. The scope of what you're doing touches more than one area of your life. And the subjects that you're speaking to are multiple subjects rather than just Johnny One Note. So that's what I mean about having that kind of an impact on somebody, because your biblically informed character is providing additional power, if you will, to everything that you do, because it informs, conditions, and establishes what you do.
So what I'm hearing, and just
what are you giggling for?
I heard a new Dr. Bism, Johnny One Note. I've never heard you say that before.
So yeah, what I'm hearing, a biblical maybe picture of what I'm hearing is, loaves and fishes, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
get a loaf of bread and you got a fish. You could give it to Mike, and he could have a great meal. But you introduce Jesus into the picture, and he feeds 5,000 plus
That's good,
people, right?
Well, here's an
good.
example.
That's what you.
Let's say, for instance, that you're leading a Sunday school class, and because you're compulsive like me, you do all of the research, you craft a wonderful message for whoever you're teaching. There's salient points that you're going to be covering. It has logical sequence. It's a good subject. You're using the right illustrations. And at the end of the lesson, people come up to you and say, gee, that was a great lesson. Wow, that was really interesting. Or they can come up to you and say, I felt like God was speaking directly to me. There's an area in my life because of what you said that I need to deal with.
That's good.
That's exponential impact.
Yeah.
That's the difference between having an ability to teach and having, in this case, a spiritual gift of teaching,
Right.
because you're producing a spiritual result. But you can see the magnitude of change that takes place.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you start talking to people of biblical truth and they say, wow, I didn't think of it that way before. There's something, I now realize I've got to make a change in this area.
Oh, yeah.
That's exponential.
Okay. Good. That's good.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep. That's a really good illustration.
One of the things that you put down here in the newsletter also was, which I think, to be honest with you, is what I believe, or what I see going on in our world today, is something that is people are looking for and also wanting to be, where you say your behavior over time will reveal who you really are in the inside.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that the behavior over time,
Yeah.
you know, sticking to your beliefs over time through every war and every battle, trusting in, you know, God or trusting in Christ in your life over a long period of time, because so many people nowadays are just wishy-washy with every
Yeah.
belief system, whatever. And so talk a little bit more about,
Yeah.
you know, about that.
Well, it comes from the leadership principles I derive from Hebrews chapter 13, verse 7 and 8. And Hebrews chapter 13, verse 7 talks about modeling your life after men who have spoke the truth to you by watching their life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so what they're looking for are character traits or abilities that are manifest themselves in behavior over time. The second part of that verse, in verse 8, is it talks about Christ being consistent.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is that it's the consistency of your life
Right.
that speaks to the power of your life. It's being that same person in the dark as you are on the light, and being that same person consistently over time. And so the idea is that, you know, I told men before, I said, you know, if I could follow you around and you didn't know I was there, and I wouldn't have to hear a word that you said,
All right, it's time to go.
I'd be able to, if I had at least 3 weeks to observe your behavior over time, that at the end of those 3 weeks, I could come back and tell you what you truly believed and what you truly valued.
Yeah.
Because your behavior will betray who you are, good or bad, over time. You can keep up a persona for just so long,
Right.
somebody that you're not, but sooner or later, you don't have the emotional or physical or mental energy to maintain somebody you're not.
Right.
So you're going to always default to who you truly are. And so when you watch somebody's behavior over time, which is what the enemy does, because he can't read your mind, but he's had centuries to observe mankind.
Right.
Right.
He can connect the dots really well.
Right.
By watching your behavior, he can tell what's going on inside of you. The best detectives in the world solve crimes, which is an overt behavior, a negative behavior. Somebody took somebody's life, somebody robbed somebody or whatever, by their motive and their intentions. The best detectives are able to go beyond behavior to find out why they did what they did
Right.
and when they did it.
Right.
So the idea is that somebody's behavior will always reflect who they truly are, for good or bad. And when Christ is on the throne of your life, there'll be consistency, congruency, and coherence to your life.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody else is on the throne of your life, like worldliness, your own fleshly desires, or the devil himself, your life will be incongruent inconsistent, incoherent. In a class I was teaching today, I talked about that whole issue of watching somebody's behavior over time to be able to understand what they truly believe and what they truly value. And so the idea is that the enemy will watch you. He can tell what's going to be happening down the road by just your behavior. He knows what's going on inside of you. And he's always on the battlefield of the internal you, where you think it's your behavior. And so he's going to try to undermine you because he knows what's going on just by watching your behavior. So your behavior will always reflect who you truly are over time.
That's good. Yeah, it's good. And then once again, I really feel like it's that consistency that we're trying to look for or be. You want to be consistent in your belief, consistent in the way that you do things, because it's so inconsistent now.
Well, Jesus was consistent with his life. That's what made him so powerful in the lives of other people. It's the consistency of your existence.
Yeah. And then I love what you put down here, which is one of the reasons why I believe you do Heart of a Warrior, I do Man to Man. Both. I'm involved in Heart of a Warrior with you. And men need each other in the midst of the struggle, not in the absence of struggles.
Yeah.
That very thought of, and that's when you become passive, you definitely don't want to reach out.
Right.
Well, when men are struggling or they're in trouble, they have a tendency to isolate themselves.
Right.
They think that I'll go away, I'll get the problem solved, then I'll come back and join the group. And you have to be counterintuitive about this. It's just the opposite of what you should be doing, because a strand of three is much stronger because they're bound together instead of a single strand, as Ecclesiastes talks about. So we need each other.
Yeah.
When a warrior is down, the other warriors are standing around and defending and protecting until that warrior can stand again. So we need each other. We gain strength from each other. And so we need to be around each other. We can't solve the problems on our own.
And one of the biggest things that keep men from doing that is the fact of that, well, this is my problem. It's my problem. I'm not going to burden another person with it, so I'm just going to. And what we've come to realize, doing Heart of a Warrior classes, doing some of the basic events that we're doing, is that the reality is when you get a bunch of men, they have the same problems, different situations, but we're all struggling with some of the same hills to die on. We're all struggling with, like I say, a challenge to embrace, And so that's such a lie when the enemy is like, well, nobody else is dealing with this. This is your deal. No, you sit down to a guy next to you and you have a conversation over coffee, and guaranteed you have a lot of similarity when it comes to the battles we face. A lot of the victories that we have are a lot of the same. And so it's just an automatic pull, I've come to a place in my own life where, one, I know I can't do life without a mentor. Two, I can't do life without a dentist. He just guides alongside me fighting the same battles. I know for a fact that what God has been doing in my life over the last 5 years is been because I've been doing life with other men.
Yeah. Sure. And it's not a matter of necessarily always receiving verbal counsel from men. It's just being present with other men. Just being around. What I find interesting, the way God's created us, is we think all of who we are corporally ends at the surface of our skin. But the fact of the matter is, and this has probably happened to you, there's certain men that when they walk into a room, you don't even have to see that they have. You sense something's different. The dynamics have changed. The atmosphere has changed. And that's what we mean by men possessing spiritual authority, which is not something you can earn. It's something that's a direct byproduct of an intimate and meaningful, vibrant relationship with your Creator. It's a matter of you have the smell of God on you. And people sense that. They may not be able to articulate or verbalize it, but they know there's something different about you. That's called spiritual authority. So it goes beyond just the surface of your skin. Is when you're walking closely with the Lord, there's just something about you that exudes holiness, or there's the smell of holy fire on you.
Right. Right.
And people sense that. And it's not something that, gee, I've got holy fire on me, because it's not something you can smell yourself. It's
Right.
other what people know about you,
Mhm.
because there's just something different about you. There's an authority to your life. There's a direction, a focus, an intentionality.
Right.
Living. And that's the other thing about God hasn't called you to live a passive life. He's called you to live an intentional life.
Mhm.
And when you start living intentionally in alignment with how God's wired you, then all of a sudden it goes beyond just the surface of your skin. All of a sudden your life speaks of spiritual authority,
Right.
which is more than personal authority or even positional authority. Positional authority is authority that's handed to you from the top down. Whatever company you belong to, they give you certain authority, but you can't live off of that forever. Then there's personal authority. That's people follow you from the bottom up because they sense something different about you, your character, the way you carry yourself. But then there's the third and highest level, which is spiritual authority. And that's when people sense that when you speak, it's as if God is speaking to you, and there's something different about you. It doesn't mean you are God. It just simply
Right.
means you walk so closely with Him that your body is giving off the fact that you've spent a lot of time with your Heavenly Father.
Right.
And I think when it comes to that spiritual authority, what there can be a tendency to do is think that this is this domineering, this smartest in the room.
Yeah,
That's
it's
not what we're talking about. We're talking about the spiritual authority that when you have that, the fruit of the Spirit are going to be amongst it: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness,
Yeah.
faith, and gentleness, self-control. So, I mean, I remember when I first met you, and I remember when we were sitting down and I first met you, and within 5 to 10 minutes, I'm like, okay, I need more of this. I know in my heart I need more of this. I've met a pastor one time where I shook his hand and I looked at him. He said 2 words. He said, "Hey, Mike, how you doing?" And I felt like he loved me. I immediately was like,
That's exactly what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. Erwin McManus has that kind of authority. He has that ability when he's sitting with you. It's like he's looking straight through you. That it sees you for real. It's uncomfortable, quite frankly, because he has that ability. It's like he knows you,
Sure. Yeah.
and it's scary to be known that way,
Mhm.
because there's some things that we want to hide. We
Right,
don't want to be visible, but he sees right through you. But it's not done in an intimidating way.
right, exactly.
It's done in a way that he really knows me.
Mhm.
There's no sense of me keeping up a persona or a false me.
Love.
Yeah.
Right. It's interesting because that's the whole point of why Mike and I are doing this podcast, is to model that this is okay, right? I mean, because so many guys would run from this. I don't want to be seen. I don't want to. I carefully crafted this fig leaf to cover up all the parts of me
that's a good way
that
to
I
put
don't want to show, right? And to peel back that a little bit is, I mean, it's unnerving, and for a lot of guys, it's it really puts them in an uncomfortable place. But as Mike, I think we've discussed it multiple times in the podcast, it's the only way to grow is to put yourself in that uncomfortable place, and to work your way through that to get to a place where now it's comfort.
There's no growth without disequilibrium.
Right.
So sometimes people come into your life that have spiritual authority, and it creates a disequilibrium in you. I mean, it's not a matter of balance for you. It's a matter of, wait a minute, I'm not feeling comfortable right now. I'm on shaky ground. I don't have my equilibrium.
Right.
And that's when you change,
Right.
when there's a healthy situation that creates some disequilibrium in your life.
So many men, it takes us to get to a point of unhealthiness, right? We get to the end of our rope, is what Mike and I always talk about, right? So you have you lose a job or a marriage or a kid or something, and this event happens, and that's this lack of equilibrium that we get to, and then we go, okay, I need to change.
Yep.
But the reality is at that point you're experiencing this loss. You're in a point of problem, right? And you have to go into problem solving mode versus living a life of that, where you're starting to become comfortable in that.
Yeah, that's good. Then.
and so that you can then continue to grow without needing this massive event to happen in your life to cause you to then address that.
Well, the other thing that, and Mike, you heard me talk about this, that trying to live a balanced life is impossible.
Right.
There's no such thing as a balanced life.
Mm-hmm.
But yet we strive to find that balance. It's
Right.
like walking a high wire where we're trying to get from point A to B, and the winds of crisis hit us from the right, and we lean into it. The winds of crisis hit us from the east or the left, and we lean into it. So we're under constant tension, under constant anxiety, trying to make it from point A to B. We go to every time management seminar there is.
Right.
We're trying to adjust our priorities because something that we hadn't planned interjects itself in our life that knocks us for a loop, and we don't know. So we're trying to gain our balance again. We were never meant to live a balanced life. What God has called us to do is live a centered life.
Wow.
When you take a look at Jesus' life, he wasn't striving for balance. What gave him such power is he lived a centered life. He knew exactly what his purpose was. So what does that mean for us as men? What does it mean to live a centered life? It's like a boat that weathers the storm. It's the ballast in the hold of the boat that keeps the boat stable in the midst of the storm, that rights itself. So what is that ballast? It's to have biblically informed beliefs, core values based on God's word, having a biblical worldview, and being motivated by the things that matter to the heart of God. That's what brings that ballast to you, that gives you the stability. So whatever storm hits you, the ship rights itself because the equilibrium is in the bottom of the hull. The ballast is there.
Right.
And so it's living a centered life. So God's called us to live a centered life, not a balanced life.
That's good, Dr. And I love what, when Denny was talking just a little bit earlier, about that uncomfortableness about when there's something in your life and somebody brings it out of you. Our first pastor, he would, back in the day, Pastor Dan, said this, and I still believe it to this day. It's when you reveal what is concealed, so it will be healed. To reveal what's concealed, so it will be healed. I mean, it's uncomfortable, but once it's revealed and you've received the healing from that, you're so glad you did. You're so glad you did. So,
That's good.
do you have anything else? Could I?
No.
Well, okay. So there's a guy watching, and he just feels like he's been in passive mode. He just kind of has stepped away from things, and he's just like you say, "Hey, Sirach, what can you say to encourage this guy, or to help him if a guy is struggling with passivity? What would you say?"
Well, first of all, you have to recognize, as Craig Rochelle once said, if you're not dead, you're not done. That's the first thing. Secondly, God is not finished with you yet. The fact of the matter is you may have made some decisions that brought you to a place of complacency in your life or apathy, or you feel like you're on the sidelines and that's all there is to your life. That's just the way I roll type of an attitude. The fact of the matter is God superintended your formation in your mother's womb. He knew you before you ever were. He set the number of days you'd walk this earth. It also says that he's given a purpose for your life, a unique purpose that he prepared in advance, according to Ephesians 2:10. So it's coming into alignment with what God's called you to be and do, to be able to lean into your fear and start taking those initial steps of obedience. It's kind of like the Luke 16:10 principle, that when you're faithful in little, God will give you more to be faithful in much. So be faithful to what's ever in front of you. Take that first step of obedience. The way you demonstrate your love for God is by being obedient. It may be something simple, giving up a habit that's a bad habit for you. It may be your language. It may be the way you treat somebody. So be faithful. Remember, what God is looking for, men, are fat Christians. The only time you don't have to go on a diet. He's looking for faithful men, available men, and teachable men. Remain faithful with whatever God's given you in front of you. Be available and be teachable. And so that'll break you out of that funk, and you'll start living a life of victory instead of a life of failure. But just be obedient to what's in front of you. It's not that God is going to use a cataclysmic event to shake your foundations, to bring you to your senses. it says in Scripture, with unveiled face, beholding the glory of God, we're being changed into His likeness from one degree to another. And that comes from the Lord who is the Spirit. So God works with us incrementally, a degree at a time, sometimes almost imperceptible. So just be obedient for the thing that's in front of you, and God will reveal you the next. The other thing I would remember to tell you is, you've heard me talk about this, I call it flashlight theology.
Yeah. I love it.
And so you're sitting in the middle of a forest, man, and it's dark in the middle of the night, and you've got a flashlight that has so many lumens, which gives you the capacity to see a certain distance into the darkness. But you don't know what's beyond that edge. And so we're often fearful about what we don't see, because we see what's immediately in front of us, but not what's beyond it. What does it take for you to see what's beyond that fringe? A step of obedience. You take one step, and all of a sudden you see a little bit more into that darkness.
Right.
So be faithful to whatever that one step is. Think about flashlight theology. Take that one step that's in front of you.
And I would add to that. When you do take that step and you start to feel like you're moving out of passivity and you're starting to get strengthened, we have the innate thing in us that we're going to change it all at once.
Yeah.
We're going to take everything on. Oh my gosh, you have a little bit of victory, and so now I'm going to attack this part of my life, this part of my life, and this part of my life. And what I have been learning in the last 5 years is you need to trust the process. Like you say, take that one step, little victory after little victory. Trust that Jesus has you on a process of healing, a process of moving forward. Because, like I say, for me, that works. So, I can do this now, and I can do this now, and then I end up right back in the passive spot. And
one of the tactics of the enemy is to get you to move 1 mile per hour beyond your determined speed. And so God has you going at a certain rate. And when you're tempted to move 1 mile per hour faster than that rate, that's when you end up tripping up over time. So the enemy wants to get you to go 1 mile per hour faster than your design speed.
So, Dr. Greg Bourgond, Heart of Warrior Ministries, people can find you at your website.
Yep.
Bunch of books there to help people out.
Yep.
We talked about the newsletters that they can email and subscribe to.
There's descriptions on there about each of the journeys.
Do you want to share what's coming up? I mean, do you want to share?
About the open LMS system?
Do you want to share a little bit about
that?
I mean, this is brand new information, and
as soon as the clock finishes here.
It's telling us we should end the podcast.
Yeah. So, we've always been limited in Heart of Warrior to geographical boundaries, to, what is the appropriate distance for people to travel to go to one of our groups, one of our journeys, I call them. And so we were limited. But what God has opened up for us is moving everything that we do also on what's called an open learning management system, where we're no longer restricted by geographical boundaries, that anybody in the world can join a group of men at a certain time and take one of these journeys.
So exciting.
And so we're building that right now. There'll be videos. I'll be interacting with you through Zoom meetings on occasion, exercises to do, but now you'll no longer be restricted to having to be in the area. I'll still be doing groups in this local area, and I'll continue to do that until Christ calls me home. But the fact of the matter is, now we're going to be able to have this online and available to people. And so it doesn't matter where you live in the world, you're going to be able to have access to these journeys that Mike has been referring to, that he's had the benefit of taking and that I've had the benefit of 30 years leading.
Yeah, so good.
So that's something to look forward to, too. The journeys, the compass, the map.
Yep. The ground zero, which is building foundations into your life to establish a strong foundation for your life. It's like basic discipleship. Phase 1 is the compass, which tunes your heart to the heart of God. And so you understand that, above all else, guard your heart, for from it comes the wellspring of your life. So that's all the compass. The map is all about trajectory, where you learn about how God has wired you, so you can leverage that wiring to facilitate His redemptive purposes in a fallen world. There's the guide that Mike was referring to. That's how to be mentored and how to mentor others. And there'll be other things that we'll put on there, but those are essentially the 4 main journeys that we've been talking about.
Good. So those are resources they can go to further this discussion and to look forward to it. Also, this podcast, obviously, they could go back. We have a couple of interviews that Mike did with Dr. B previous episodes, so go back and check those out too and get some more information. Any parting thoughts, gentlemen?
I think we're good, sir. Thank
Yeah.
you for joining us. I really
Just
appreciate it.
remember, man, God's not finished with you yet.
Yep.
That's good.
Amen.
Amen.